Okay, so we've been asked a lot about Lucas and how he's doing and his surgery and what the plan is. And to tell you the truth, it's just super complicated and it's really difficult to explain, and it's really hard to do when you're just standing there talking to somebody to give an accurate understanding. So I want to just put together a quick, yeah, right? I want to put together a video just for all the people that genuinely care and that are praying for us and for Lucas, just to help understand Lucas and his heart and the surgery that we have planned coming up in 2 weeks. So it took our surgeon an hour and a half to explain this. Hopefully I can get through it in maybe 5 minutes. So here it is. This is to the best that I can draw anyways, typical heart. So just kind of the basic anatomy. This is the right atrium. This is where the blood, after it's been used by the body, recollects in the heart through, this is called the superior vena cava, and this is called the inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava drains blood from the upper half of your body, and the inferior vena cava brings blood back from the lower half of your body. It collects in the right atrium, goes through a valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle is a pumping chamber. That chamber pumps it into the pulmonary artery, which pumps the blood to the lungs. The lungs reintroduce the oxygen into the blood, and then that blood is sent back into the left atrium through these pulmonary arteries. There's four main pulmonary arteries that reconnect to the left atrium through another valve into the left ventricle, another pumping chamber, where it is pumped through the aorta into the body so that the body can use it, and then the circle starts all over again back to the right atrium. So that's how a normal heart functions. Lucas's heart is pretty different, and so Lucas has 6 heart defects that are abnormal, and so the first one is what's called total anomalous pulmonary venous return. So that means these 4 pulmonary veins that bring oxygenated blood back to the left atrium actually don't reconnect to the left atrium. So in Lucas's heart, they all confluence together, and then they connect to the superior vena cava. And so all that oxygenated blood is coming back to Lucas's heart on the wrong side of his heart. Second abnormality is that Lucas has an ASD, which means this is the wall in between the right atrium and the left atrium, and there's a hole. There's a hole in that wall allowing blood that has oxygen to mix with blood that doesn't have oxygen. In the typical heart, oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood are kept separate. Not in Lucas's case at all. So that's number 2. Number 3 is what's called transposition of the great arteries. So again, coming off of the right ventricle is supposed to be the pulmonary artery, which connects to the lungs. And coming off the left ventricle is supposed to be the aorta, which pumps blood to your body. So in Lucas's case, those are switched. And so coming off of the right ventricle is Lucas's aorta, and coming off of his left is the pulmonary artery. Number 4 is Lucas also has a VSD, which is a hole in the wall of the ventricles, and in that case it's very large. He has what's called pulmonary stenosis, which means a narrowing of the pulmonary valve and the pulmonary artery, which restricts the flow. And lastly, this inferior vena cava, which is supposed to connect to his right atrium, actually connects to the left on the wrong side of the heart. So you can see he's got a pretty backwards and confused heart. But I think that's been the miracle of this whole thing, is that somehow with all of these six defects and deficiencies, somehow his heart is miraculously perfectly broken, and that his circulation with all these defects is balanced, and because of that he's healthy. And so where we anticipated being in surgery a year ago, We're just now getting to surgery for the very first time. So what's the plan? The plan is 3 steps to the surgery. Surgery is going to be 6 to 8 hours. Step number 1, they will sedate Lucas and hook him up to a heart-lung machine. So that's a machine that circulates Lucas's blood for him. They'll open up his chest, hook him up to a heart-lung machine, and this machine will circulate his blood for him and introduce oxygen into his blood so that the doctors can stop his heart and correct everything that needs to be corrected. So the first thing that they're going to do is address this total anomalous pulmonary venous return. So again, all the blood that's leaving the lungs isn't getting back to the heart on the correct side of the heart. And so in order to do that, I guess this is a challenging part of the surgery in that typically babies that are born with this usually go immediately into emergency surgery right after they're born. And so we are just profoundly thankful that Lucas is a year old and that when he was born, this wasn't a critically emergent surgery that we had to do on the day that he was born, because that's usually the case, because this part is tremendously difficult on the body. So in order to do this specific portion of the surgery, the goal is the doctors do not want to reattach each one of these particular veins back to the heart, because when you suture the end of a vein, there's a scar tissue that forms, and especially in kids this young, if you were to sew this vein back onto the heart, you're going to have scar tissue at each of these points, and that scar tissue is going to ultimately restrict the flow of that blood back to the heart. That's a terrible drawing, but I think you get the idea. And so instead of reconnecting each vein, what they're going to do is they're going to detach, they're going to cut into this confluence where all these